Every time you toss a coin in the air, there's this feeling of unpredictability that begs an immediate question, whether it will land on its heads or its tails. But there's something we usually don't think about too much. We all know that regardless of the side that we'll be facing up when the coin lands, there is a certainty that it will land. You may say that nobody thinks about that just because, well, this is too obvious. But here's the thing. This is one of the most important principles in probability, that something must happen. And if we give enough time, anything could happen. You could think that winning the lottery twice, for instance, is something highly improbable, and it really is. But if you see the big picture, once you start thinking about the number of people betting in the lottery in the whole world since the invention of lottery 300 years ago, you may realize that somebody winning the lottery twice is bound to happen. I've been trying to test this hypothesis for a long time now, and I want you to help me. You are going to make a prediction, and it's going to happen like this. You're going to look at the cards, okay, and choose one card, take the card out, and leave it on the table like this, okay? And you can leave the rest of the deck aside. And this is usually uncommon. When a magician asks someone to pick up a card, the person who does it does without looking at the cards. But today I'm not here as a magician. Today I'm here as a spectator that wants to see if something really special could happen. So go ahead. I want you to freely and consciously select a card. I'm not going to look so you don't think I'm trying to see something. Okay? You can leave the rest of the deck over here. That's perfect. So we're going to use this deck of cards, okay, to test this hypothesis, okay? And we don't need to use the whole deck, okay? We're going to use only a bunch of cards. So I'm going to shuffle the cards like this, and I'm going to ask you to pick up little groups of cards and leave them on the table until we have a small packet, okay? Okay. Yeah, I think we have enough. So, go ahead. I want you to shuffle these cards, please. I want you to be as fair as possible, so shuffle as much as you want. And you can give it a cut at the end if you want. Okay. Well, when I asked you to select a card, you did know that, but you were also choosing a location. Because every card has a value, okay? Going from ace being 1 until king being 13. So we're going to use this value to count to a position on this packet, okay? But because you selected how many cards we were going to use, I don't know if we have enough cards to count, okay? So I have to count, because if you selected like king, I need to know if we have 13 cards, okay? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. That's enough, okay? Well, what I want you to do now is I want you to count the value of your card over here, right? And when you get to your card, you're going to separate it and put it beside your card. Like, let's assume you selected a 7. You count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 7th card, you put it right beside your card. Okay, so go ahead. You pick up that 1, 2, 3, 4. That's nice. Well, you could have selected any card, right? And it would land in another position in this packet, okay? And I remember, just forgot to tell you about my hypothesis. Here's the thing. What if someone could look at a deck of cards, freely select one, make a prediction, pick up a bunch of random cards from a shuffled deck, shuffle these cards, deal them on the table themselves, using their prediction as a location guide, and the two cards end up being the same? Well, remember that I told you that if we have enough time, anything could happen. You might throw me off saying that, well, we're only talking about this for a few minutes now. But no, I'm not talking about the time since you and I, that spent since you and I started talking about probability. I'm talking about the time we had since the first magician ever tried something like this. I'm talking about the millions and millions of playing cards that were dealt in a table since in the whole history of playing cards. So if we're lucky, this should be enough time. So please go ahead and turn both of the cards at the same time. Ah! Yes! Oh. First, let me leave this deck over here and pick up the first one. The first important part of this structure is giving the deck to my spectator to select a card, but not only select a card in the sense of picking up a card, a random card, but by choosing a card, like freely choosing a card. And I think this is very important for a few reasons. First, I don't have to shuffle this deck because they are going to look at the cards and they're going to see that the cards are shuffled. So this is one step. And because I'm giving them the cards, I'm validating reality. Now, the thing that my spectator thinks about the deck, that is a 52 deck of cards, 52 cards inside this deck with different colors and shapes and stuff like that, the way they think about this is the way they see that it is. So I'm validating reality at this point, okay? And now because they choose a card and leave the rest of the deck aside and I don't touch that, this is a very interesting moment. And I think this is an important part of the Tesseract theory in a way that I'm trying at the end of it deliver something inexplicable. I'm going to talk about the inexplicable paradox on the second session, but I'm trying to deliver a tesseract, something that they can't explain. Well, the second part needs another deck, and there are two necessary shuffles for the method, as you're going to see, and they select bunches of cards, okay, from random positions, and they count the cards themselves in the table. And I think these points are very important and very powerful to the effect because they are doing most of the work. And if at the end they see that the two cards are the same, if they try to rebuild the processes, they're going to remember that they did most of the work. So there are other elements. I'm going to refer to it when I'm explaining the method. But just to comment on one specific part, I usually don't comment when I'm shuffling cards, like I'm going to shuffle the deck. But what happened was the clip you watched was the second take. On the first one, my spectator made me a favor of forgetting his prediction. So I had to set up everything, and because of the language barrier, English is not my first language, so I forgot what I had to say at that point. And I usually write my script. You're gonna have access to that script, but I usually write my scripts, and I forgot what I needed to say at that time. So I kind of babbled and said that I'm gonna shuffle the cards. But usually I don't recommend that. If you're shuffling, you just shuffle. You don't say I'm gonna shuffle the deck. If you're gonna do a very good and important shuffle, you can say that. But on this case, it's just two shuffles. And because they're selecting little groups of cards and then they're gonna shuffle the cards themselves, you don't need to point that. Okay? So let's talk about the method. First things first. The cards that you're going to use for them to select a card are marked. These are Bicycle Ultimate marked deck. This is a Bicycle Ultimate marked deck. And this is for the performance you watched, the alternate handling doesn't require a marked deck to be performed. But here's the thing. I'm doing this because I want to make things easy to my spectator, okay? There's no process, more processes involved. In the alternate handling, you'll see that there are more processes. So here I'm trying to make things easier and cleaner and clearer. So they select a card, okay? So they choose a card. Let me pick up this one, whatever. Okay, and I can see that this is the king of spades, right? Because of the mark. The second deck has two secrets. The first one, it's on a stack. I'm going to talk about my stack, okay? And on the second session, there's one effect that I use a stack, and I'm going to talk about that later. But suffice to say that it's kind of a Juan Tamariz mnemonica stack. I know every single card from this deck. So this is the type of stack I'm using. So these cards are not on stack because I messed with the order. So I'm going to use another stack to tell what's going to happen. So the second secret, though, is that this is a one-way deck. So if you don't know that, a one-way deck is a card that has marking on one side of the deck. So if you change the orientation of the card, you can easily spot where's the card. And this is my favorite method for finding a card on a shuffle deck because it's really casual and really like you don't care what's happening with the deck of cards. So if a spectator selects a card, let's see the 4 of clubs. If you return it like on the other direction, they can shuffle the cards as much as they want, and they can do riffle shuffles and stuff like that. And you can look, of course, I'm marking the cards, the marking of the cards on this case are on the back, but well, I think I changed another card, and let me see if I can find the 4. So you can mark the cards, of course. Here it is, the 4. There was another card like turning with the other direction. So I'm gonna show you how I made this card by playing a clip for you. Just so you know, the aviator clip, the aviator deck of cards, on the bottom, well, it doesn't matter, but the bottom right corner and the top left corner are the opposite. They have kind of a bubble-shaped design that has a different size. So you can use this kind of aviator deck. This one, okay, you can see that with the one-way principle. But for this effect and for the effects I usually use this principle, this method, I prefer to do a marking. So I'm gonna play you a clip so you can see where I do the markings on the aviator, but I'm gonna show you how I do on bicycles and other stuff. Okay, so you can use a sharp object. I'm using on this case kind of a tiny X-Acto knife, and you can scrape a little bit of the paint like this, so it's easy to spot the card. And if you look the two cards together, you see that this marking is very, very easy to spot. If you prefer doing with bicycles, there's this way, which is difficult to other magicians to notice. And if you want a way to see with more ease, you can make a tiny dot on this part of the deck, and it's easier to spot. On the monarchs, for instance, this is one marking that it's very difficult to notice because it kind of has the same pattern of the back of the cards. This is one of my favorite decks of cards, the Skulls and Bones from the Conjuring Archive website, and it's important to notice that the faces of these cards have different sizes of index, making them a face one-way deck. Well, I'm going to use this deck so you can understand how I find a card to continue the effect. Well, here's the thing. The problem with one-way decks is that you have to take out the card from the deck and then flip either the card or the deck so you can be one card in a different orientation than the rest of the deck, right? And I wanted, because this is a very important thing for me, I consider this to be a big deal for me. I try as much as I can to avoid looking at the faces of the cards, okay? I think this is a kind of a refraction. It's a tiny one, okay? I could say that if I had to put a number on that, I would say that this is just 1.1 or 1.05. It's very, very slight, but I try not to look at the faces of the cards to perform effects. I imagine that for something to be really impossible, I don't have to have access to the identities of the cards. So I try to avoid that. That's the reason why I prefer using a marked deck, and the reason why I prefer to use a stack to get to the card I need. And I needed to develop a way of flipping the orientation of a card without having to take the card out, and this is what I'm going to explain to you right now. But first, let's see how I can retrieve the card that is selected, in this case the King of Spades, right? So you need to practice some estimate count, right? So if you work with stacks, you can like try to cut 16 cards like this. The King of Spades is on the 16th position on my deck, and with this card on the bottom, you're going to perform the following technique. So if you can cut, just let me try to make this, like if you can cut precisely on the location, like you can do this and maybe count 2 cards or so more than the card you need. You can cut. You do this to pick if you got the card right. And because I have 2 more cards, what I'm going to do now is to buckle 2 cards. So okay, I can return them to the top, and then I have the king. And this is a very casual process. So let me try to cut less than 16 cards, okay? So let's imagine I cut like 14 cards. So I know I need to put 2 cards to get to the king, right? So if I cut, I looked, there's the 14th card on my stack. I just cut 2 cards very casually again, and here it is. You have to be careful not to flash, of course, because they have selected, they know the identity of the prediction, so you have to be careful not to flash. Now, let's use this deck to perform the most important technique of this effect. So I have, let me see just if I have every card on the same orientation. I think there's no card reversed, and here is the King of Spades on the bottom of the packet, right? So I'm going to perform something that I developed specifically for this effect, and I don't think I think this is original, but I didn't make a research for that. This is called a bottom spin axis, and it looks like this. I just did, right? And now I'm gonna place the card more or less on the 10th position, and this part is done. So this is one of the most important principles in the tesseract theory, the invisibility, okay? I'm trying not to cause a refraction. So here it is, the King of Spades in a different direction. So I'm going to explain to you how to do that. So here it is, the King of Spades, and what's going to happen is when I'm shuffling the cards, I'll pull cards like this, a bunch of cards, like 13 cards or so, to start the overhand process, right? But on the first bunch of cards, I'm going to use my left hand ring finger to pull this card together with the bunch of cards I'm taking out, right? So I'm doing this, but I'm going to place my right hand ring finger on this corner of the deck. And what's going to happen is when I pull the card, when I pull the king from the bottom, because I'm blocking this corner of the deck with my ring finger, what's going to happen is the card is going to flip like this, right? And when I get to this point, I just kick the card so it flips. And I proceed shuffling the rest, and now this card is flipped. Its orientation has changed. So let me try and do it again so you can see. So here it is. I start pushing, the card starts flipping, I kick the card, and then I proceed shuffling the rest of the deck. And because now the card is on the bottom, I proceed shuffling the cards until I put the king around the 10th position. It doesn't matter, right? It's just between the 5th, and the 10th card. So let me pick up the king. Here it is. Let me put it again. Now I'm going to perform on this side so you can see. This is what's happening. It's invisible. And actually, because of the chaos you can create with this flipping part, it's kind of a angle safe. And so let me pick up the king again. Here it is. Let me flip. I'm gonna do it again. Here it is spun. I don't know. So here it is, the king. Okay. Well, once you have the king and around the 10th position. Oh, I'm sorry. I flipped the card. So let me spin that out again. So now, so you have two shuffles, right? One to spin the card and the other to place the card on the 10th position. Now, you're going to ask your spectator to pick up little groups of cards, right? So usually when you do this, the first part they're going to take is the approximately around the card where you, the position where you put the king, right? If they don't do that, what you can do is you start like spreading. If they don't pick the card, you call the king. Okay, here it is, the king called. The half insert spread call. So you call the cards, and now you let them take the first group of cards without forcing this. So if they pick this part, you proceed, and on the second group you push the king to the bottom of the packet. So when they are extending their hands, you just push the king and they will pick that up. And here's the thing about the performance you watched. You're gonna try to make them select around 13 cards. So you don't want what happened in my situation to have 20 cards. I don't remember exactly the number of cards my spectator selected. So you want to have around 13 cards. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 cards. That's enough. That's good. And one thing that I would do differently from the clip I shot was I don't recommend you to spread and then close and then count, because if you spread, the common thing to do would be to count the cards like this. So I don't recommend that. But there is an important part because after they picked up the cards, you give them the cards to shuffle, and they will shuffle the cards. Okay, and they shuffle as much as you want, but you don't want the selected card, the king in this case, to be on the top two cards, because it's difficult to reposition the cards, and either the last two cards. So what you can do is to comment on something, to explain what's going to happen now, and you open just the three cards to see if the card's over here, and then if you go to the other to the last cards to see if the card is not on the bottom. On the case that this is a king, which is a card that goes all the way up to the number 13, that's no problem to be on the very last card, because it's easy to switch. But you can do this, right? You can just comment on something to check
if the card is not on the top two cards or the top bottom cards. And now you say that you need to count to see if you have enough cards to count the cards, right? And what you're going to do now is you're going to reposition the card. This is 13. So what you have to do is, this is actually pretty easy. You're going to start like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. When you get to the card, I'm going to leave it like facing up to be easy. So you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You call the card. Okay, here it is. 11, 12, 13. You count the 13th card and you place the king right below it. Because now you're counting 13 cards and the cold card is one of the cards you counted. So you need to go up to the number you want, right? Let me change the prediction so we can try other positions, right? So let me use the number 5. I don't know if I have a 5 over here. Oh, I'm just going to use a 5 for the sake of the explanation, right? So I have a card, a 5, and another 5 over here. So they shuffle the cards, right? You don't know the position. You check to see if the card is on the top 2 or the last 2 cards, right? And you know it's a 5, so now you have to put the selected card on the 5th position. And here's what you're going to do. Now you're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, and I was lucky over here, but I'm going to put the card right up more than 5 positions, right? So I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When I get to the 5th card, if I didn't see the card, I'm going to lock on this card. I'm going to do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to lock. 6, 7. When I get to the card, I'm going to call the card and keep counting. Okay? So here it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And now I have this gap, okay, on the 5th position. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 cards and the locked card. And now the only thing I need to do is to split this a little bit and return it. So now I repositioned the card to the 5th position. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So let me try to show you again. So if the card is before the number, it's easy. You just call the card 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you leave the card on this position and keep counting. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and the card is on the 5th position. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But if the card is after the selection, you're going to lock on the position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. You split and you place the card on the 5th position. And now you just give them to deal the cards and they're going to deal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I messed something. Let me do it again. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I split, place the card, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And the trick is done. So, this was the explanation for the law of inevitability. I think I covered everything. Now for the alternate handling. Well, what can you do if you don't have a marked deck and don't know a stack? Well, it's very simple actually. Let me just check to see if there's another card with a different orientation. Okay, so what I do is actually pretty simple. Let's assume that this deck of cards is not a marked deck. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask them to shuffle the cards because now this is kind of important. And now I'm going to dribble the cards and ask them to say stop. When they stop, I'm going to perform a bubble pick. And a bubble pick is like this. I'm going to buckle with my thumb like this, forming a bubble. But with this position, I can spot that this is the Jack of clubs, okay? And what I'm going to do is this. I dribble, they say stop, I put this card on my face like this, and with this position covering my eyes, I can bubble pick and see that this is the jack, coincidentally the jack of clubs again. So I can return the cards, okay? So let me do it again. I dribble, they say stop, I do this, cover my eyes, bubble peek, and see that this is the 5 of diamonds. And then I do this, and for the first part, I'm done, kind of done, because now I'm gonna see that they could have selected any card. And when I open the cards, I look for the 5 of diamonds and see the card on the very top of the 5 of diamonds, which is the ace of spades, right? So I say, well, you could have selected any card, and I look very quickly to the ace of spades, okay? So now I know the identity of the card. On this case, because this is not a stacked deck anymore, I need to take the ace out, right? So I usually have to create another script piece that allows me to comment on something, and because I need now to create a justification to open the cards and see them. That's why I don't like to look at the cards, but if you don't know a stack, you'll have to retrieve the ace. So I'm commenting on something, looking for the ace, and when I get to the ace, I call the ace, right? Very quickly. Now I can perform 3 shuffles. The first one, placing the ace on the bottom. The second, performing a bottom spin X's on the ace. And the third, placing the ace around the 10th position, and that's done. So here it is. Let me look for the ace. Here it is, right? So this is an alternate handling, and the rest, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. And now, after placing the ace on the right position, you're gonna ask your spectator, this is a very important part, I'm sorry. You're gonna ask your spectator to look for the cards. Like, you have one card, you're thinking of one card, right? Open the cards, open the deck of cards and take your card out, and they will do kind of the same display that you use on the original method, right? Because you know the identity of the card, now you create a time misdirection between you make them choose a card, and now they are looking through the cards and picking up the selected card and putting on the table. And that's it.